All right, thanks so much for joining us once again on the bright side. I want to continue on with Chapter 1 in our Handbook of Good Nutrition. Real quick, by way of review, we're on Chapter 1, protein, the most important of all the chapters in the Handbook of Good Nutrition. Protein is the most important of all the nutrients that you can supplement with, all the food nutrients. Protein is the star of the show. There's other nutrients, obviously, that are important. When you're making a movie, there's all kinds of people that play a part in making the movie, but the stars are the actors. Protein is the actors in the movie of nutrition. There's two kinds of protein. You've got the fiber proteins. They're long strings, or tiny little ropes if you prefer. They give the body strength. They give the body structure. And then you have your blobby, gooey kinds of proteins. They're actually called globulins, and they're the ones that perform chemical reactions in the body. The body is a chemical factory, a chemical reaction machine, and these globby proteins are very, very important. Remember, the protein we eat is the protein we are. The protein we eat is going to be the protein that becomes us. Eating fiber proteins, eating the globby proteins, eating the building blocks of proteins are one of the most, maybe the most important way to keep the body's chemical machinery humming along as it should. You cannot make proteins, whether they're the fiber proteins or the blobby proteins, unless you're eating protein. By eating collagen, for example, you can support your body's ability to make its own collagen. Collagen is the major protein in your skin and in your bones. It's the major protein in your body. If you're wrinkling fast, if you have osteoporosis, eat collagen. It's way more important than any wrinkle cream for your skin. It's probably even more important than calcium when it comes to your bones. Collagen can be found in bone soup. You can get collagen building blocks in the glucogel caps. They're a great source of the collagen amino acids, and they're a great source of collagen. The bone in bone soup, the cartilage material in bone soup, is also a good source of fiber proteins. And the fiber protein building blocks that can help you make your own fiber protein. Eat bone soup, eat collagen, eat cartilage, eat your glucogel caps. By the way, the glucogel caps are also great for your digestive system. You know, gelatin can actually suck up digestive juices, and when you eat gelatin with food, those digestive juices can combine with the gelatin, which will combine with the food, and it can actually help your digestive system. The glucogel caps, by the way, also have something called N-acetylglucosamine, a type of glucosamine that can actually coat your digestive system. So the glucogel caps and gelatin can be good for the digestive system, in addition to being a great source of the amino acids that help build up fiber proteins. You can eat globby proteins too, globular proteins. One of the most significant places where these globby proteins do their work is in the body's immune system. If you have autoimmune disease, if you have cancer, if you're getting frequent colds, if you have cold sores, or if you just have inflammation, all of these are health conditions related to the immune system. Eating globby proteins can give you anti-inflammatory benefits, and they can support the body's immune system defenses. Eating the globby proteins, it can reduce the incidences of colds and cold sores, and it can provide health benefits for you wherever the immune system is active or overactive. That means autoimmune disease, people. Eat your globby proteins. The two best nutritional food sources of globby proteins are whey protein and egg protein. In fact, if you want to know what a globby protein looks like, just look at the white of an egg. Crack open an egg, look at the white. That slimy, gooey characteristic of egg white is largely the indication of gooey, slimy, globby proteins. If you want a nice visual that will give you a picture of the difference between a globby protein and a fiber protein, just think of the difference between the gooiness of an egg white and the gristle on a piece of meat. The gristle in meat is an example of fibery protein. The gooey, slimy glob protein is found in egg white. Just picture in your head what an egg white looks like. Picture in your head what the gristle off a meat looks like, and that'll give you a good visual of the difference between a globby protein and a fiber protein. One of the most important differences between globby proteins and fiber proteins is how they react with heat. Fiber proteins break down with heat, and sometimes if you heat a fiber protein just enough, you can actually free up the amino acids, the building blocks, and this can make heat an important ally in improving the solubility and the digestibility and the usability of protein, and this is one of the advantages of cooking meat as well as other fleshy proteins. Of course, if you cook meat too much, you're not only going to break the protein into its components, but you can damage those components. That's why you want to be very careful about cooking your meat with too much temperature, at too high heat, at too high a heat level. Grilling on high heat can be really problematic. We've said this before. Grilling on high heat, grilling protein, can actually create carcinogenic compounds. It's best to cook your fibery proteins, your meats, slowly in a crock pot. Broil your meats. Make soups with your meats. And seafood as well. Use as little heat as possible when you're working with your meat so that the proteins are slightly broken down, but they're not damaged. On the other hand, when you heat a blobby protein, they become tangled. The amino acids form this tangled mass, and that tangled mass is what makes a raw egg turn into a firm, gel-like, hard-boiled egg. Same heat can turn milk protein into a gel-like mass. That's what curdled milk is all about. Curdled milk is an example of proteins that have become tied up and tangled as a response to heat. Another important difference between fiber proteins and globby proteins is how they react with water. Globby proteins are going to mix with water. Globby proteins are soluble in water. They'll mix pretty easily. They'll form a thick solution. Because globby proteins interact with liquids, that can set off the immune system. And this is where immune reactions come from. This is why people can be allergic to eggs, for example. Globby proteins can interact with liquids. They can dissolve in liquids in the body. And this can set off the immune system, especially when these globby proteins get in the blood. And this is one of the main mechanisms associated with food allergies. There's another food that contains globby proteins, and it's a big-time problematic food for a lot of folks. We'll tell you what that is when we come back from our break. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side. Our number is 866-582-9933. We'll be back right after this with more good health information. Increasing dietary protein improves polycystic ovarian syndrome, a study that was published in the journal Nutritional Medicine. Actually, the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, as I look here. Increasing dietary protein improves polycystic ovarian syndrome. The study found that in women with PCOS, consumption of a high-protein, low-carbohydrate diet promoted weight loss and improved sugar metabolism as well. PCOS is largely an insulin and sugar issue. Eating more protein is a great way to stabilize blood sugar. You don't have to have PCOS to benefit from eating more protein. Anybody who's dealing with blood sugar issues, and at least 1 out of 3 Americans will benefit by upping their daily intake of protein. So you have 2 main kinds of proteins, the fiber proteins like collagen and elastin. These are proteins that give the body structure. The skin contains large amounts of fiber proteins. Your fingernails, your hair are made strong through the action of fiber proteins, your skeletal structure as well. And then you have your globby proteins. These are proteins that dissolve in water. Because these proteins dissolve in water, they can get into the blood and they can cause reactions. If you're having a food allergy, chances are it's a food allergy in relation to a globby protein, most often found in dairy as well as grains. Grains contain lots of globular proteins, especially in the gluten family. Gluten allergy and grain allergies in general are the manifestation of the body's response, the body's immune activation in response to globular proteins. Same with milk, same with egg allergies. Legumes like peanuts and soybeans and beans in general, they will also contain globular proteins that can cause immune reactions. When offending globular proteins get into the blood, they trigger the body's and the blood's own globular system. That's what the immune system is. It's globular proteins. When this happens, you have a globular war in the blood, a war between the globs in the body's own immune globs, and the globs in food. This is not good. The globs in the blood, they're called antibodies, will fight the invader globs from food, and as in any war, you're going to have chemicals released and you're going to have civilian casualties. And this is what food allergies are largely all about. Residents are the civilian casualties of a war, and residents in the blood are civilian casualties of the immune war. Civilian casualties like platelets and transport proteins that are delivering nutrients, red blood cells that carry oxygen. These are all potential civilian casualties in the blood when there's an immune system war, a war between the immune system, that is, and components in food. Platelets, transport proteins, red blood cells, all of these can end up as civilian casualties, and you end up with blood that's thick, blood that's sluggish, all as a result of these globular interactions and pollution from dead cells that are the innocent casualties of chemical warfare in the blood and the chemical remnants of the war itself. If you have low platelets, if you have anemia, if you have high blood pressure, if you have blood clots, all of these can be the result of a chronic long-term war in the blood between globular protein attack from foods and the subsequent glob protein defenders from the immune system. Also, these globular proteins by themselves can thicken liquid, and that can contribute to the sluggishness of the blood too. Thick blood can lead to every cardiovascular disease you can name, including strokes and heart attacks, which are the leading cause of death in this country. And thick blood can also keep oxygen and nutrients from getting delivered to cells. Cells that don't have oxygen, cells that don't have nutrients become sick cells, every bit as much as you would become sick if you were starved of oxygen and nutrients. And sick cells can become misshapen. We're going to talk about this either tomorrow or the next day, how sick cells become misshapen, and then the body perceives these misshapen cells as an enemy and attacks those cells. That is called autoimmune disease. When cells become sick because they're starved or because they're robbed of oxygen, and this can happen because the blood is too thick, when cells become sick, the shape of the cells becomes dysfunctional. Cells take on the wrong shape. When cells take on the wrong shape, the body's immune system can perceive those cells as the enemy and initiate an attack on those cells. That's called an autoimmune disease, and that's why you want to backtrack all autoimmune diseases to the digestive system. I've been getting a lot of calls from folks who have multiple sclerosis, a classic example of an autoimmune disease. If you have MS, people, it's not a question of what supplement can I take. That's not the question you want to ask yourself when you're dealing with MS or any other autoimmune disease. What supplement can I take? I'm reading all kinds of craziness on the web about taking this nutritional supplement or that nutritional supplement or this product or that product if you have MS. If anybody tells you to take this product or that product to get rid of your MS, either they don't know what they're talking about or they're trying to sell you something, because the fact of the matter is multiple sclerosis or any other autoimmune disease is caused by the body attacking itself. The reason the body attacks itself is it perceives itself, it perceives the cells that make itself up as the enemy. It has nothing to do with a nutritional supplement that you can take. You've got to figure out why is the immune system perceiving its own cells as the enemy, and chances are very good it's because the cells have taken on the wrong shape because they're sick and they're malnourished and they're starving of oxygen, which means you have to stop the steady stream of toxicity that's coming into the body, almost always through the digestive system, as well as making sure that you're oxygenating correctly. Deep breathing techniques is always going to be your friend no matter what kind of health issue you are dealing with. Globby proteins don't always activate an immune response. Sometimes eating globby proteins can have an important health benefit, multiple important health benefits. One of the neatest things about these globby proteins is when you eat them, either in egg or in whey or in other dairy products, these globby proteins can get absorbed directly into your blood where they can support your globby proteins, where they can support your immune system, which is made up of these globby proteins. Remember, the protein you eat is the protein you are. And one of the most relevant and classic examples of this is the ingestion of globular proteins. For example, eating immune globby proteins from whey is one of your best food strategies for supporting your own immune globby proteins. If you don't have reactions to whey protein, there's probably no better immune boosting food on the planet next to human mother's milk than whey protein. The globby proteins in whey and an egg Egg as well, by the way, is a very powerful immune-boosting protein. The globuprotein in whey and eggs also play another critical role, maybe the most critical role in the biochemistry of health, and we will be telling you what that is when we come back from our break. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side. Our number is 866-582-9933. We're coming back at you right after this. Don't go away. Okay, so we've got two kinds of proteins, fiber proteins, globuproteins. The globuproteins form the immune system, so-called immune globulins, and there's a second glob protein family that plays a critical role, maybe the most critical role in all of biochemistry, and that is the enzymes. Enzymes are the quintessential globular protein. There's two varieties of enzymes. You've got enzymes that work in the body system, and you've got enzymes that work in the digestive system. Enzymes that work in the body system are called systemic or system enzymes. The digestive enzymes are called digestive enzymes. And they're another example of your globuproteins. All of the chemical reactions in a cell depend on enzymes, and if a cell is broken down, its enzymes are not going to be working as well as it should. The cells will not be making the right kind of chemicals, and the next thing you know, you will have a disease. Enzyme therapy is a tried and true medical intervention. It's mostly used in Europe. It's built on the idea that you can replace dysfunctional system enzymes, systemic enzymes, by taking them in a therapeutic fashion. And the proponents of enzyme therapy can point to a very successful track record. Even though Western medicine isn't really big on enzyme therapy, there is a lot of scientific literature to back up the use of using enzymes, especially for inflammation. If you're dealing with any kind of inflammatory disease, and what disease does not have an inflammatory component? Almost all diseases do. So if you're dealing with any kind of degeneration or disease process, one of the ways that you can take care of at least the symptoms and maybe even some of the biochemical breakdown is by using enzymes. There's a lot of good enzyme information if you go to enzymeresearchgroup.net, enzymeresearchgroup.net. The second group of enzymes is the ones we talk about all the time on this program, and those are the digestive enzymes. We will continue with that discussion tomorrow. I'm also going to tell you about degenerative disease. I want to talk a little bit before we continue with enzymes tomorrow. I'm going to talk about degenerative disease. If you're dealing with any kind of breakdown process, you're going to want to tune into The Bright Side tomorrow. I'll be going over the step-by-step process of how disease forms, especially autoimmune disease. We'll do that tomorrow. Our number 866-582-9933. Time to go to the phones. Let us take our first phone call of the day. Diane, what's going on?
To get the most bang for my buck, but I'm a little confused about enzymes because I heard Dr. Peter Glidden say enzymes before meals, and he said after meals they could even have adverse effects, but I hear you say after meals. Can you help me?
No, you want them with meals. With meals or before meals is probably the best time. I don't know why he said after me. Dr. Glidden's great. I like a lot of the stuff he does, but I don't know about taking digestive enzymes necessarily. You want to have the enzymes in the body when the food hits the body. So if there's food in your stomach and you take the digestive enzymes with the food still in your stomach, I don't know if it's going to make that much of a difference. If you want to be just, like you say, get the most bang for your buck, probably take the enzymes before your meals for most bang for your buck, although I don't know necessarily that you'd have a problem if you took them after meals. What did Dr. Glidden say the problem would be?
He didn't say. He just said that take your enzymes after your meal because they could cause some adverse effect, and that's all he said. So,
I don't know
I've
why.
heard.
You'd have to ask you'd have to ask him, and matter of fact, I'll ask him what he's thinking the next time I talk to him because I don't know why he would say that. Although he must have had a good reason because he's usually pretty right on. However, I don't know if it makes that much of a difference taking it before or after. If you have to take it, if you want to get the most bang for your buck, probably take them before your meals. That way they're sitting in your digestive tract when the food hits. Although if you forget and you take them after, I don't know that it's going to make that big of a difference. As far as causing adverse effects afterwards, I don't know necessarily how that would work, and you'd have to ask Dr. Glidden that. Okay? Does that help you, Diane?
Yes, Ben. Hey, did you answer the cliffhanger from Friday?
Which was the cliffhanger?
About the enzyme.
Was there a question on Friday I was supposed to answer?
Yeah. You said you was going to let us know how we could get enzymes without supplementing.
Oh, I did tell you that, didn't I? I think that was on Thursday. Yes, I didn't answer that one yet. I'm going to talk about enzymes tomorrow. Thanks for reminding me on that. Sometimes I forget. There is a way that you can get your enzymes without having to use digestive supplements, and that is, well, I'll tell you right now. Use food enzymes, especially pineapple and especially papaya, loaded with wonderful digestive enzymes. If you use foods, especially fruits and vegetables, but most especially papaya, pineapple, even tomatoes can be a good source of enzymes. Those can help you break down your food. That's how you get that's one way to get enzymes without having to use digestive enzyme supplements. Thanks for reminding me, Diane. I did forget about that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, God bless. Have a beautiful day. All right, moving on to Arizona. What's up, Sarah?
Hi, Ben. How are you?
Greetings. How can I help you?
I'm calling in about my 5-year-old niece. She's had urinary tract infections and yeast infections since she was about 2.
Okay.
Probably like 5 or 6 of them.
Okay.
She started with the urinary tract infection, and when they gave her the antibiotics, she got the yeast infection, and ever since it's kind of gone back and forth.
Okay.
She does take a really good multivitamin and probiotics. She doesn't drink soda or sugary drinks. She eats
She's
well.
doing something in the digestive tract. That's what my guess would be. UTIs are usually have something to do with bacterial imbalances, so-called dysbiosis, D-Y-S-B-I-O-S-I-S. Dysbiosis means the bacterial colonies in the digestive tract are somehow off balance. There's a health condition called SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth, and this can happen. And by the way, you can think that you're eating great, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your digestive system thinks that you're eating great. What we think mentally and in our culture and in our society is good eating is not necessarily good eating from a biochemical point of view. You always go by your symptoms. If somebody's getting chronic UTIs, the first thing I think of is dysbiosis. That means problems with the bacteria in the colon. Now, you say she's on probiotics. They may or may not be working as they should. You may want to experiment with juggling some probiotics, different brands of probiotics. Look for 80 billion units. How old did you say she was? 5?
5.
Maybe look for like 40 billion units, 30 to 40 billion units in multiple strains of bacteria. Does she have any kind of things going on with the digestive system? Any kind of bloating or discomfort? Does mom know? Runny stools,
Not that
constipation?
she complains about, no.
See if you can spot that. Did you say they're chronic UTIs or she just had them once?
No, she's had at least 2 UTIs and several yeast infections. She currently has a yeast infection.
You know, it's almost impossible for there not to be some kind of digestive component there. That's what I would be focusing on. I wouldn't treat necessarily the dysbiose, the problems with the urinary tract infection. I wouldn't treat that specifically, although you can use Lugol solution or some kind of iodine solution. SSKI is another one. You could put a couple drops of iodine in water and have her drink that down. Dr. Jonathan Wright talks a lot about using iodine, Lugol solution, and SSKI for UTIs. But I'd be more concerned with why are they happening rather than just treating the urinary tract infection. And again, almost always, if you have UTIs that appear, and they're not, if she only had them twice, they're not chronic. But if they do continue, then I'd be looking at the digestive system, and I'd be looking at problems with bacteria. Now, there's certain foods that can throw off bacteria in the gut, most especially sugary foods. Fructose can do it. Fructose is a big, big problem. We haven't talked about fructose malabsorption syndrome in a while here. A lot of folks think it's just the sugar part of fructose, and the sugar part of fructose is a problem. But the real problem with fructose is in the digestive tract, especially in the intestine. Hang tight, and I'll tell you what that is when we come back from our break. I'm Pharmacist Ben. You're listening to The Bright Side. Our number's 866-582-9933. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back, folks, to The Bright Side. I'm Pharmacist Ben. Thanks for joining us. 866-582-9933 is our number. We're here 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 8 to 9 Pacific and 10 to 11 Central Time. If you like what you hear, tell your friends. And we're also up 24/7 on the archive page at brightsideben.com, where you'll find the shopping cart with all the longevity products and articles and videos, and also a Join Now link that you can click on if you want to make some money selling longevity products. Okay, let's see. Sarah in Arizona, are you there?
Yes.
Okay, so UTIs in kids, do you ever wonder why just women get UTIs for the most part and men don't get them?
No.
You never wondered that. Okay. Well, in case somebody out there was wondering it, it has to do with the positioning of different parts of the female anatomy. It turns out that the bacteria that causes the large majority of urinary tract infections is an intestinal bacteria. It's E. coli that lives in the intestine. And the location, the way things are located in the female anatomy, lends itself to inoculation of the urinary tract by intestinal bacteria, and you can use your imagination to picture what I'm talking about here. So the fact of the matter is, many times urinary tract infections are caused by problems with bacteria in the intestine. The best way to take care of that is to use probiotics. And everybody should be using probiotics, children as well as adults. You can also eat yogurt, or you can use fermented foods that are a good source of probiotics. As far as the yeast infection goes, yeast and bacteria live in balance. When the bacterial balance is thrown off, yeast will overgrow. So if the child is on an antibiotic, as soon as she's done with the antibiotic, I would be doing take double the dose of probiotics. Secondly, if there's any kind of digestive problem, you're going to want to be able to address that. I know you said you don't think there are any, but more often than not, you're going to see some digestive problems. It's hard to have a urinary tract infection on a chronic basis, even though this isn't quite chronic. It's hard to have UTIs on a chronic basis without having digestive problems. 2, yeast love sugar. Dysbiosis loves sugar as well, or sugar can cause dysbiosis. Fructose is sugar. Many people suffer from fructose malabsorption syndrome. This can throw off bacteria in the gut, especially in the small intestine, causing this small intestinal bacterial overgrowth issue. So I'd be staying away from fructose. Apple juice can be a big problem. I know a lot of kids and parents are fond of using apple juice to keep kids quiet, or to keep kids active. I don't know why parents give kids apple juice, but they do. And that can throw off bacteria in the gut as well. So staying away from fruit juice. Use more protein if you have a problem with sugar, with kids withdrawing from sugar. And then use probiotics as well. If you want a simple treatment, Dr. Wright talks about using Lugol solution and SSKI, and that's something that you might want to think about as well. Thanks so much for calling it, Sarah from Arizona. Appreciate it. Moving on, Linda in Ohio. What's up? Okay, we lost Linda. Let's go to Texas and talk to Elizabeth.
Hi, yes. I wanted to ask, how can we apply all of the nutritional way of eating, particularly the Paleolithic style, when we go to storable foods? Because everything I look at as far as storable foods is exactly what we don't want to eat.
Jerkies. Make your own beef jerky. That's probably the best thing you could do. It's dry. That's how the Mongols did it. They became a great wandering empire by using jerky. And that's probably your best form of storable paleo-friendly food. Let's see what else. Dried fish also can be good. Salted fish maybe can be good. Let's see, protein powders. Protein powders are great, actually. Use whey protein powder. I'd stay away from egg protein powder. The proteins in eggs are very fragile, and when they make the powder out of eggs, they can do some nasty things to the protein. So I'd stay away from egg protein powder. Canned beans, if worse comes to worse. Canned tuna fish, if worse comes to worse, although there are problems with tuna fish and beans, but they can be good sources of paleo-friendly foods. Your most important, the most problematic foods in terms of storable foods for paleo are going to be the fats, because of how unstable fats are. That's really where you're going to run into some problems if we get into some weird kind of crisis and we have to rely on stored foods. A lot of people are going to be dealing with essential fatty acid deficiencies. I guess supplements would be good in that regard, using EFA supplements, things like the Ultimate EFAs. But protein would be best with canned proteins and with jerky proteins, dried proteins, and then fats with the essential fatty acid capsules. Nothing else would be a problem, though. It would basically just be your fats and your protein. Is that what you were thinking, Elizabeth? Did I miss anything there?
I'm just trying to figure out, I guess, if you were going to point me in a direction, which way should I go? Because every company that I look at, they have processed grains and processed sugars.
No, jerkies. Do you know what I mean when I say jerky? Beef jerky, deer jerky, that kind of thing, where you dry the meat and you do, I don't know what they do to make jerky, but they dry it and they put salt on it, and that preserves the protein value. So that's probably the best way to get your protein. And as I say, your big problem is going to be with good fats because of how unstable they are. But if you stock up on essential fatty acid capsules, you can probably make do nutritional essential fatty acids, and then the more stable fats like coconut oil, you can use those for cooking. So get a bunch of coconut oil, get a bunch of good essential fatty acid capsules like the Ultimate EFAs, get a bunch of jerky, canned tuna fish, canned protein, and then you're going to have to deal with you're not going to have fresh vegetables, so you'll have to deal with that. And that'll be a problem too. But then you can also use frozen vegetables, I suppose, frozen peas and that kind of thing, frozen broccoli. And that way you can get around your vegetable needs. So frozen broccoli, frozen vegetables, essential fatty fatty acid capsules, jerky protein in the form of jerky, and then also canned tuna fish and canned beans maybe. And that ought to get you by at least a little while. Hopefully you won't run into too many problems where we will have to rely on stored food, but that should get you by. Thanks so much for your call, Elizabeth. Appreciate it. Let's see. Isaac in Michigan, what's up?
Hi, Ben. I had a question on on testosterone, because it seems like every time I turn a TV or radio on, there's a new testosterone product they're advertising. And,
you don't need it.
Right.
Here's the deal with testosterone. Let me tell you about testosterone. The biggest problem with testosterone as we get older is insulin resistance. There's a relationship between the building hormone insulin and the building hormone testosterone. Both insulin and both testosterone are involved in building muscle and building mass. Over time, the body becomes resistant to insulin. That is, over time, if we're abusing our body with sugar, our body will become resistant to insulin. When the body becomes resistant to insulin, it will also become resistant to testosterone. Okay? When the body becomes resistant to insulin, it will also become resistant to testosterone. When you resensitize your body to insulin, you will also resensitize your body to testosterone. Does that make sense, how I explain that, Isaac? You want to make your body more sensitive to insulin. There's another thing you want to do here, and I'll tell you what that is in a minute. But the first step is for all low T issues, low testosterone issues, is reduce insulin resistance, make your body more sensitive to insulin. The best way to do that is to reduce your intake of insulin-spiking foods. Go to more protein. By going to more protein, not only will you be reducing insulin resistance and making your body more sensitive to testosterone, but you'll also have raw materials for building muscle mass. So you get two nice benefits by using more protein. The second thing is you want to reduce your exposure to xenoestrogens, especially in foods like soy. So reducing your exposure to estrogens from foods, especially from soy. Also, there's unfortunately estrogens in tap water, and you want to stay away from tap water too. Reducing your exposure to estrogen and making your body more sensitive to insulin. Those are the two most important steps for you to take if you're dealing with low T. You'll know you're successful. You'll know you're on the right track because you'll start to lose body fat. And you won't have to lift weights to do it, by the way. You'll notice that you're starting to lose weight and start to lose body fat simply by making your body more sensitive to insulin and reducing your exposure to testosterone. There's also great nutrients that you can take. Zinc is very important for the anabolic response, for the muscle-building response. It's extremely important for testosterone. One of the things that happens with testosterone over time is the body will actually turn it into estrogen. And you can actually slow down that response, that testosterone into estrogen, male hormone into female hormone response by using zinc, which is a great aromatase inhibitor. The enzyme that does that work is called aromatase, and by inhibiting aromatase, you can keep your testosterone levels up. But the most important thing to do for low T is to reduce insulin resistance. Thanks so much for your call. Appreciate it, Isaac. All right, that's all we got time for today. I've been talking to a lot of you guys on the phone the past couple of weeks. I've been giving all our listeners, we've been talking a lot about the bright side philosophy, but I haven't really talked about one thing in specific. So tomorrow I want to take a little digression. I want to talk about how degenerative disease develops in a simple and easy to understand fashion so that we can all have the information and the power, because information is power. We can all have the information and power to reverse our degenerative disease processes no matter what is showing up in our lives. We'll do that tomorrow on the bright side, so you're going to want to tune into that. I'm Pharmacist Ben. Thanks so much for joining us, friends. Alex Jones is next on most of these stations. We will talk to y'all later. Bye for now.